next up, I'd like to invite my three panelists up on stage. Come on, guys, up here. We are going to talk about the future of banking. So Tom and James and Zor, go ahead and take a seat.
Got it wrong.
So we're going to talk about the future of banking. Money, banking, and the way people pay for things is changing rapidly. We're in a really interesting time right now of disruption. And disruption breeds opportunity. Bitcoin has captured the public imagination. Apple Pay, which we recognized as one of our 10 breakthrough technologies in 2015, is a major shift forward. And Alipay, based in China, has over 300 million users. The face of what we think of banking is changing. Now, quick poll, real curious. In the last year, how many of you have actually even set foot in a bank to do your banking? Okay, about half. So, good. But
Can I ask a follow-on to that? Just real quick.
Yeah.
Just
Tom,
how many of you love your bank? I would like to see that.
Less. Okay, interesting. We'll talk about that. No, thank you. That was a good follow-up. But we have to say, traditional banks are not out of the game yet. So we've got Tom here from BBVA, which is the second largest Spanish bank. And last month, they made a very radical move. Their chairman made their head of digital, Carlos Torres Villa, the actual president of the entire company. Ousted the old president, brought him in. That was a really radical move. So we're very lucky to have Tom here, who's from BBVA Ventures, based here in the Valley, who's going to share his insights about how BBVA is building the bank of the future. And then joining us is James Gutierrez, who is co-founder and CEO of InSeat. I think I said it wrong,
right,
but I'm
InSeat,
sorry.
yeah.
And then Zor Garlov, who made it from New York this morning, who's CEO of CoSito. So we're going to go down the road. They're each going to introduce themselves a little bit more and talk about what they do and also what they see the most exciting opportunity in banking today. So Tom, why don't you kick it off?
Thanks, Kathleen. So Tom Whitaker with BBVA Ventures. As Kathleen alluded to, we are the corporate venture arm for the large Spanish bank, BBVA. BBVA has a presence in over 31 countries, around 51 million customers, just to give you a little bit of context in terms of our scale. We're very big. In the US, we own BBVA Compass in the Sun Belt. And then throughout Latin America, we are one of the top players. We own the largest bank in Mexico. So every market in Latin America, with the exception of Brazil, we're usually in the top 3 in terms of banking size. So in terms of what we care about, we're looking to invest in companies that we believe represent the future of banking. And the future of banking, from our perspective, is digital and mobile in nature. So it's relevant to this conference here today. The banking industry is experiencing a bit of a perfect storm. It's driven not only by advances in technology and the explosion of mobile devices, which are a mini computer in everyone's pocket, but also by an evolving regulatory landscape that seeks to increase competition in our sector. So all of a sudden, we're seeing competition from non-traditional players. A lot of that's in the form of technology companies, and it's also in the form of guys like James, not so much Zor, but James, in terms of alternative models for underwriting and building more efficient models for the banking industry. So that's kind of what we're all about. Startups are near and dear to our heart. We actually invest in them to help them help us. We think there's a lot that we can learn as an organization, and as Kathleen alluded to, the recent reorganization for BBVA is an indication of how serious we're taking this.
Excellent. James.
Great. Hi, everyone. James Gutierrez. Very happy to be here with you. company's called InSeat. It's not insect. Sometimes I hear that. InSeat is a Swedish word that means insight. I know many of you thought that I was a Swedish one, but my wife's the Swedish one in the family. So that's where that comes from. So what do we do? So, our business is about the future of lending, and we see that brands, not banks, are going to be the future lenders. So we offer what's called lending as a service. So we basically built the underwriting, the risk engine, all the capability, and we've white labeled that to companies who want to take lending into their own hands. So they have data on their customers, they have customers, and they want to start either offering financing to purchase something or just offering small loans. As part of that, we've also been, we hope to be announcing some partnerships with banks as well, which kind of ironically helps banks get back into the business of lending. And the other side of what we're doing in innovation is really increasing access. So with all the new regulation in the US, it's very hard for traditional sources of financing, let's say banks, credit unions, to provide credit to folks that fall outside of the mainstream. So have either lower FICO, maybe they're an immigrant, they don't have credit history. And so we've innovated a lot on how we can increase access to those people who want to move up but need access to capital to do it. Thank you.
Zor,
Okay.
go ahead.
My name is Zor Gorlov. I'm co-founder and CEO of CoSito. I must say that it's very surreal for me to participate in this panel because I grew up on the other side of the Iron Curtain, and I was always told that in the future there will be no money. So, what we do at CoSito is we really reimagine and reinvent how consumers interact with banks. So think of Siri that understands you better, that has deeper understanding and knowledge of banking, and more importantly, of your relationship with the financial institution. In other words, think of Siri with an ABA as your personal banker. CoSito, we use artificial intelligence technology to make this all happen. CoSito is a spin-off from Stanford Research Institute. Incidentally, Adam spoke here earlier today. That's where Siri was created, SRI. So in many ways, we're taking next-generation virtual personal assistant technology to the financial services market and to the enterprises at large. We are one of the portfolio companies of BBVA Ventures, and we're happy to be here.
Excellent. Thank you, Zor. We're going to come back to that no money comment in a bit. But before we do that, let's talk about mobile. So this morning, we saw a demo where the fellow from WashU was actually showing you a transaction, a credit card transaction that occurred without
when there's no affinity versus no affinity. So it's very valuable.
Excellent. Okay, we've got another question waiting on deck, but I want to revisit Zor's statement about that there will be no money.
Yeah.
So, Zor, tell us about a world without physical currency.
Well, I think this is where it is all going. I mean, the money will get digitized, and I don't claim to be an expert in that space, but what we're trying to do at CoSito is to simplify how people manage their finances, how they manage the digital money, how they pay each other. So that's where we come in. We're really trying to surprise and delight users on how they interact with their banks. And think about banking applications today, right? What happens, people go on mobile banking applications because there's something wrong, right? They need to check their balance, they need to transfer money. And we're trying to change that mindset. I mean, we're trying to build this intelligent virtual banking specialist that will help people better manage their money, understand their money, make better financial decisions. And a lot of it will be digital.
And I think the future of money will be increasingly digital in nature, right? Cash and checks, I think, is probably what Zor was alluding to. That ideally goes away. And I think most of us today are paying with our mobile devices or at least with a piece of plastic. So I think the future of money probably has less and less cash and checks.
Excellent. All right, my question here with the mic.
Thomas, I'm very curious. What is your view on the sustainability of a world without cash, where you can even buy without money?
I assume you're referring to maybe cryptocurrencies or things like that, or barter.
No, I'm referring to the business model of Thomas, where he stated that brands will be the lenders of the future. So they will allow you to buy without money. And if you combine it with a world without cash, how sustainable will that model be for, future generations?
Yeah, so when you have a credit relationship, I think that can be entirely cashless because you can give someone credit. But I think, look, the reality is this is the future. Everything's digital, mobile, it's growing. But let's also remember that there's a global population where there's still a lot of people where they're still in the cash world, right? And so, how can these technologies bring them into the cash world? In the event of you shopping and buying something at a location, that can be entirely digital, but you might also need to go do something else, and you might have to have a means of payment, even in this country. There's a lot of people that are unbanked or underbanked. So I think that every year, more and more of these technologies start bringing in more people into digital, but there's still going to be a portion of people that will be in the cash world that will be part of the challenge of bringing them in.
Fantastic. All right, now Zor, final word. What are your expectations for financial services in the next 5 years?
Well, what we're seeing across the world, and we now work with banks in, here in the United States, Europe, and Asia, is that future financial services industry will be driven by new entrants. And banks are in many ways are aware of it, just like BBVA is, and they're trying to sort of find a way how to compete. And new entrants, in Asia, it's Alibaba and Tencent. They're really redefining their online banks now, and they're redefining how consumers get access to financial service information, how they transact, how they get loans, etc. So I think that and we will see more of that in 5 years, that there will be new players in the banking industry and the banks that are competitive enough, that are smart enough to evolve and change their business models and compete with the new entrants, that are the ones that will succeed.
Excellent. James, your vision for 5 years?
I like this topic of the underbanked and access. I think banks are good at holding deposits and being stewards of capital, and the government comes in, protects that. And in some ways, when you need to process through a system, you need to use a bank. But in terms of the direct-to-consumer relationship or the B2B relationship and using data to make better decisions, I think you're going to see tons of startups partner, and you'll see banks partner with a lot of new emerging technologies to bring better experiences, faster, more data, more access, and then I think over time we'll start having more of the people that are on the fringes into the full banking sector, which will just help the economy grow, and that's kind of where I think all the partnerships are headed.
The question becomes in that, in that new universe of startups and banks, who owns customer relationships, and whether banks become new telco dumb pipes. I mean, and I think that's the key question for the banks to figure out.
Most definitely. And Tom, you're in a good spot there at Google, at BBVA Ventures.
It's all right. Yeah, I think these guys sum it up. Banks need to reinvent themselves. So the next time I ask the question, how many of you love your bank, everyone raises their hand. If they don't, someone will take those customers away, and banks will be in dire trouble in the near future.
All right. Well, you heard it here first. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for an interesting panel. And we're going to pass it back over to Jason.
Thank you.